Hello, everyone. This is Tom Fox back again with Matt Kelly for another episode of the award-winning Compliance Into the Weeds. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, Tom. Good to be here.
Matt, it appears you have returned from your travels, noting your background on today's recording. So I hope our listeners will recall you were in Lithuania last week while we recorded. So I was wondering if we might start with you saying a few words about your experience in Lithuania, the conference, and the compliance professionals you were able to meet.
Sure. Yes, I was in Lithuania for really 3 or 4 days, but for 2 days worth of conferences. They were both hosted by a group known as Pro Money and Pro Money Events, which is run by a delightful woman who actually is in the Ukraine, but operates throughout Eastern Europe and the Baltics. And on Tuesday, they had about 100 and some odd people there for an anti-fraud conference. And then on Wednesday, they had 150 odd people there for an ethics and compliance conference. This was mostly for, to no surprise, Eastern European and Baltic compliance professionals. And I met people from as far afield as Kyrgyzstan and Romania, and a lot of people from Poland, a lot of people from the Baltics, a lot of people from Central Europe. And it was interesting because I have never been to that part of Europe before. This is a part of the compliance community I have never encountered, but they were great people. We did spend a lot of time talking, to no surprise, I'm sure, about artificial intelligence. A lot of discussion around anti-money laundering because cryptocurrency, financial services, online gambling, they are a large part of the economies over there and perhaps even proportionally larger than here in the United States. So that was all over the agenda. It was privacy, was AI, was know your customer, various other anti-money laundering compliance risks and issues. But it was still fundamentally a lot about how do you govern third parties? How do you get your senior executives to buy into strong compliance? How important is corporate culture? All the same stuff we talk about here in the US too.
Oh, cool. All right. Well, you wrote a very interesting post about a part of AI regulation in the EU, and it's about keeping humans in the loop. I want to append to that in September, there's amendments became effective to the CCPA, which require that automatic decision making and automatic decision machine technology are now required to have a human in the loop for decisions that are made around people, i.e. HR or other similar decisions. So I thought this would be a great way to explore what's the human in the loop, how do we put some controls around it, and where do we go with it forward in a best practice compliance program.
Yeah, sure. There's a lot to discuss there. It was just a good stroke of timing that while I was in Europe, I realized that just the week before, European regulators had put out guidance around effective human oversight of automated decision making, which is really just a fancy way of saying, how do you make sure the human is in the loop and doing something while in said loop? The guidance came out from the EU data or the European Data Protection Supervisor, which is known as, I guess, the EDPS. I had not known the EDPS until now, but they are basically the EU's own data protection authority, not to be confused with each EU member nation's unique data protection authority that it has. So 27 EU states, there are 27 national data privacy supervisors in each country. And then over all of that is the EDPS for all of Europe. And this agency, it does have some enforcement powers, but really it is more about publishing guidance on various AI and data privacy issues, which are very quickly becoming one and the same in Europe. And that guidance it puts out, it can be instructive for the national data privacy and AI regulators out there who really are taking more enforcement and doing that more seriously. But also, I think for corporations, it's good to keep an eye on what this guidance is and what it's saying so you can see what's on the regulators' minds and skate to where the puck is going to be for AI and data privacy issues.
Very NHL.
I know.
Very. You can tell season's coming. Is it already here?
I'll be honest, I am one of the very few New Englanders who don't follow hockey that much. So I don't know. I think the season is, I know it has not yet started. I'm not sure if preseason has started yet. I know the Celtics preseason is starting up, but I'm not up on my hockey. I just know the metaphor and it works.
Well, as I explained to my wife last night, there is not much more less relevant than October NBA basketball, and I have to assume the same for NHL hockey. But with that, Matt, I was interested in your blog post in the direction you took around how do you set up a control and how do you audit against that control. So, can you walk us through that part of what you wrote about?
Well, sure. So let me start with what this guidance really is trying to accomplish. It does not actually delve into the specifics of either the EU AI Act or the General Data Protection Regulation in Europe, both of which do require attention to automated decision making systems. So, to a certain extent, even though the EU AI Act, the enforcement of it is still very much in its infancy, if you have a reckless approach to AI in Europe, you could also violate the GDPR because Article 22 of the GDPR requires that you have to get user consent before automated decision making. That would be something like an AI system giving a credit rating to a customer or giving maybe setting a price for something that a customer wants to buy. Potentially, it could extend to uh, interpreting somebody's healthcare results and offering them a prescription or course of treatment or something like that. Any sort of, like the name says, automated decision making about a person and what that person can or can't do with your organization. But the guidance, like I said, it doesn't get into the nitty gritty of compliance as much as it walks through here are all of the bigger, deeper questions you should consider for effective human oversight of automated decision making. I guess, therefore, this guidance, it struck me that it would be really relevant to anybody designing business processes or designing controls for business processes where AI or some other sort of automated decision making is going to be very much embedded into that process. So, auditors would probably love it, frankly, because this guidance is a series of assumptions we make about what human oversight of AI would look like. And how do we know that oversight, those assumptions really do hold? And I'll give you some examples of that in a bit. But if you read through the guidance, it's not terribly long, but it's not short either. It is really designed to push you to think through how do we know that the human will do this or do that or do the other thing? How do we know that the human will really be able to intercede with an AI system that might be making bad choices? How do we know that the human will have the right incentives to do that? How do you know that the human will have the right ability to actually detect that the AI is giving bad choices? And when we talk so often about auditors doing root cause analyses or trying to design the right controls or trying to game out what are the risks that really could bite your company in the rear end, it's all about challenging assumptions that we have for how will this business process happen. So when you see this guidance here about how do you know this or that or the other thing will happen just because you have a human around an AI or a human who's nominally in charge of the AI system, that's not the same as effectively overseeing that this system is working well and making decisions in accordance with your expectations for it.
Matt, perhaps I could take a step back and ask you, who is this legislation aimed at and aimed for? And then is it the users of an AI? At least in the California legislation, they focus on decision which impacts humans. So that's the reason really for the HR angle in the California law. But who or what is this legislation trying to protect?
Well, I should say, this is guidance rather than legislation. There's already the EU AI Act out there. And I think with the EU AI Act, it is Article 14 if I'm remembering my articles correctly, yes, it is, that says certain AI systems and automated decision-making systems are not permissible under the AI Act unless there is effective human oversight. And the key word there is effective human oversight. In theory, you could say, well, the CEO is the boss of the company. He or she oversees everything. So there's our human oversight of AI. That is not going to fly. It's really about, this guidance would be for probably that group of people who are sitting down at your business to say, we want to use AI to do this thing, to make these sorts of decisions that might affect consumers, might affect persons, individuals, whether that is in hiring, whether that is in promotions, whether it is in discipline, and that could be employee discipline or a company. It could also be sentencing in the criminal justice system. If any criminal justice organizations out there want to use AI to determine sentences, that's not far-fetched. It is happening sometimes. However, that is a perfect example of you need effective human oversight of what sentences or punishments is the AI recommending for various cases and why. So, in theory, you have probably the first line business unit, that owner who is coming up with, I have a use case for AI. It's going to make these decisions. It's going to automate this stuff. It's going to make my team so much more efficient and productive. It's great. You would have maybe a compliance officer or an IT executive who's also sitting down with the first line person to say, whoa, 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 let's make sure that this AI system is reaching the right sort of decisions. And you might have an internal auditor who's going to swoop in at the end to test all of that to make sure that the AI that is now making these automated decisions is doing so with effective human oversight. What does effective actually mean? And that's what this guidance gets at. I will give one very striking example for me was, how are employees incentivized to oversee an AI system? Are they paid to make sure the AI makes the right decisions? Or are they paid to make sure that the AI produces the most output? Because if it's the latter, it's not really effective oversight. You are paying the person to make sure the AI goes through and turns the rabbit wheel as much as it can and as quickly as it can. And if it starts making bad decisions, why would the human necessarily want to pause all of that? Because that's not how they get paid. They get paid to churn through a process, not to make sure the process works well. I really liked that subtle distinction there between human oversight and effective human oversight. That's the sort of thing that this guidance is trying to challenge people to remember and keep in focus as you are going through these, I guess we'll call them AI transformations of your business processes.
So, what are some of the examples of assumptions challenged that you found interesting beyond what is effective?
Well, so another example that they came up with that I really liked because it kind of challenges our whole notion of what controls are, is that the effective human oversight should include real-time oversight of system operations. Now, that is taken right from this guidance here. It's 2 lines. I'll read them out. Real-time oversight of system operations, that is, supervision of systems deployed in production environments, like live AI systems. Real-time oversight is considered the one that can be most consequential. This stage represents the critical window where human operators can still review the system's behavior and intervene before its output takes effect, which helps to prevent potential harm. Now, that's kind of long-winded, but basically they're saying effective oversight is where a human can watch the AI doing its thing, realize that it is making bad decisions, and then stop the AI before those bad decisions and the consequences thereof go on out the door. How do you prevent that as opposed to go clean up the mess after the AI has made the bad decision? So why is this so interesting to me? When you think about it, before AI came along, human oversight of an IT system really had to happen in 2 ways. You would have maybe audits or tests of the AI system, but that's more like a detective control. Are we sure that this AI has done the right thing? Let's go and look at what it's already done. Let's see that it works. You could also have preventive controls of the AI, of the IT system. You're going to train employees on how to use the IT very well, and you're going to make sure that the IT system can't be tampered with in some way so that it will misbehave. Those are preventive controls. So you would have detective controls of an IT application, you'd have preventive controls of an IT application, but in the end, the human was still working the actual IT system. AI comes along and the human isn't there doing the thing. The human is there to oversee the AI doing the thing. This is where I'm not quite sure, what do we call that control then? Because the guidance said you have to be able to see it happening and then intercept the bad stuff before the bad outcome happens. So is that a detective control, or is it a preventive control? Or is it both? Because we don't have a word for that. And I kind of casually said, I guess it's going to be a detecto-preventive control, but that's not really a thing. But that concept, you would need to design a process so the human can watch what the AI is doing, figure out the AI is now going off the reservation, and then prevent that from happening. All of it in real time. What's that control look like? What do we call it? How does it work? I don't know. I have calls in to my IT audit friends to help me understand and unpack this even more. But that's the kind of stuff that we're going to need to think about. Because if we don't have this, then you're not going to know that the AI is going haywire. And you won't figure that out until much later after the damage is done. And now you're in cleanup mode, which is going to be more expensive, which is going to get the regulators unhappy, which is going to look bad to your customer base. It can't be that. But then what is it supposed to be? Because you can't audit the AI, I think, as it's doing its thing at a zillion miles an hour. You have to observe and monitor it, but then also intercept it before it makes its bad choices. These are the sort of growing pains that we're going to have to go through as we try and apply proper risk management to AI systems.
Matt, if we take the example that's most often used in the amendments on ADS to the CCPA, they talk about a hiring process where AI, for a STEM type position, AI kicks out all of the women because of inherent bias built into the system.
Yeah.
And if you individually look at the rejections, you might not see anything. So you have to have some sample size, whether that's 10, whether that's 100, whether that's 1,000. And so how can you both detect and then prevent if you have to garner some sample size to understand if the AI has gone off the reservation?
This is exactly the sort of control design or the theory of control design that we have to figure out. I don't know, because essentially you have to be aware of all the things the AI has decided you're not going to get to see, all the candidates that I'm not going to bring before you, human manager. And at some point, I think the human manager probably would say, well, wait a minute, for 5 days, it's given me nothing but men. That's weird. How did we get here? But you're not necessarily going to know that until the automated decision-making system has already started drifting off course. How do we make sure that we can intercept that course drift and then bring it back onto the correct course as quickly as possible? I don't know, but that's what we have to figure out. And is that a matter of you need better people? Do you need new people because you're older? Is this something where the HR team wouldn't necessarily even review this anymore? An IT person would be reviewing the AI's performance? Or are we going to take the HR people who would normally look at the finalists and train them to be more aware of potential going off course? Are we going to wind up paying people not to process the number of candidates, but to make sure that the AI functions correctly? Like I had mentioned before, what role do incentives play here? It's strange. It's going to challenge a lot of what people traditionally have done, because if we move from a world where the people do the work to the AI does the work and the people oversee the AI, you need a different skill set because you're not doing the work anymore. Your job is to oversee IT. That's not what a lot of people do on the job. They use IT, but they don't oversee it working on its own. And what are those risks? What are the controls? Which ones would make sense for a large company? Which ones would make sense for a small company? All of these questions we could talk about for hours here, but that's what this guidance is meant to sort of drop the scales from your eyes. Like, oh, wow, we have all this stuff that we need to think about. Humans tend to put a lot of faith in what IT tells us because normally it's pretty obvious. If I fill out an Excel spreadsheet formula to add two numbers together, I don't really have to double check that when I say one number is 2, then another number is 2, the answer is 4. I don't have to worry that AI is going to get that wrong. But when it's more like there's a million different factors that AI is going to juggle to give me 10 possible price quotes, 10 possible job candidates, 10 possible credit scores for an actual customer, that's much harder for us to understand. Did this AI give me the right answer or not? But well, it's the AI. It's got to be better at this stuff than me. I guess I should just trust it. That's faulty, I think. I mean, it's okay up to a point, but you can't just put blind faith in the AI's output. And that is an issue that this guidance flagged. So we're going to have to think about what are our thresholds for that. And Tom, go back to, I think a couple of months ago, earlier this summer, you and I talked about a study that KPMG did on how employees use AI, where it said 2/3 of them take the output of AI and use it without evaluating whether that output is reliable. And here's this guidance saying, that's really risky. You shouldn't do it. So we have to get from what the KPMG study says people are really doing to this better standard and more skeptical standard of where we should be with effective oversight. I don't know how this journey unfolds, but this is the journey that we must make.
Who leads this journey? IT, compliance, legal, all of the above, none of the above, or other?
I'm going to punt and say it depends. And I don't even have a law degree, and yet I know that's the correct answer here. I think clearly IT would need to be involved because they would have to tell you what is actually possible with the AI system we're using. Some AI systems could be designed in some ways, maybe other AI systems, you can't do what you'd like it to do. IT would be the people telling you what's technically possible. Corporate compliance or legal are probably going to be there to tell you what is required of us. And I think IT audit or internal audit would be very good at challenging people's assumptions around how do we know that the AI will behave this way that we all think? How do we know that the humans overseeing it will behave in the way that we're all assuming? Like I said at the beginning, this guidance is all about assumptions that we should challenge. And that is exactly what auditors like to do, and double check that the assumptions we're making are grounded in reality and are correct. So I think auditors are going to get a real kick out of this guidance, but it just demonstrates the complexity of the challenge in front of us.
Well, that seems like a great note for us to end on, Matt. I think I can safely say we're going to be revisiting this issue down the road.
Probably many times. Thank you, Tom.